Welcome to The Tax Factor, the UK's top tax podcast from Blick Rothenberg, the tax, accounting and business advisory firm. The Tax Factor Autumn Budget Special with Heather Self and Heather Powell.
I call the Chancellor of the Exchequer.
Well, it finally arrived, the long-awaited, anticipated and most trailed ever autumn budget statement. Welcome to The Tax Factor, the podcast from Blick Rothenberg that keeps you up to date on all things tax. This is our budget special, and I'm delighted to be joined by Blick Rothenberg partner and head of property and construction and fellow Heather Powell. Welcome, Heather.
Thank you, Heather. And what an episode to join.
I can't believe it's your first time on The Tax Factor. I'm sure it won't be the last.
I very much hope not.
Well, it was a big budget again, with tax rises of some 26 billion compared to 32 billion last year. The Institute for Fiscal Studies described it as a spend now, pay later budget. We get lots of additional spending over the next few years, and then the tax rises kick in and it'll all be fine by the time of the next election. Taxes are going up to pay for spending on things such as the ending of the two-child benefit cap, personal independence payments, which weren't reformed as they'd hoped, and the triple lock on pensions. All of that means that she has also managed to increase her headroom, so she should meet her fiscal rules with room to spare now of about 22 billion. What did you spot as the big measures, Heather P?
Well, the massive headline, and perhaps we need to talk about what this actually means, is what we're all calling fiscal drag, Heather. It's the freezing of the tax allowances and then the income tax bands. And the quantity is 8 billion she's going to raise by freezing those bands.
In just 1 year.
Exactly. You know, the quantity of tax she's going to take from people as they get their pay rises. And that's a massive headline, isn't it, Heather?
One of my colleagues calculated that it's almost the same as putting 3 or 4 pence on income tax, but it doesn't feel as bad because people don't notice it. You get the same allowance as you got last year, but if you've had a pay rise, more of it is going to be subject to tax. So over time, you're paying more tax.
And I would challenge you, in as much as you say people don't notice it, of course their core pay that they're getting now, their take-home pay is the same. But if they get a 5-6% pay rise and they think that £1,000, £2,000 pay rise is going to convert into an increase of 80% thereof, £1,600, and it's not there because it's been eaten away by additional tax payable. People will notice it because that feel-good pay rise just doesn't materialise.
And there are a couple of other big measures as well, weren't there?
Well, I walked upstairs to speak briefly to the students who are all training to be chartered accountants and mentioned student loan threshold is being brought into this freezing of allowances and that they really will be paying back their student loans because every time they get a pay rise, every time they pass their exams, go up to the next year of training, the student loan repayment is not going to move up along with them. Even more of their pay is going to be taken. And again, that's a massive take over the period that she's frozen that allowance for, isn't it, Heather?
And anyone really who's under 30 is going to be paying back student loans. So their basic rate of tax is not 20%, it's 29%.
Exactly. And it's a real tax that's going to stick with them for a long time with the way the interest is imputed on those loans and added in. A few dismal faces upstairs on our audit floor this afternoon, which I've scurried off downstairs. Of course, the other big thing that we really ought to mention is pension salary sacrifice. And that's going to be a big headline and something that people are really going to have to get their head round.
Let's come back to that one when we talk more generally about taxes on employees, because I think the whole atmosphere is going to change between employers and employees. And I think the final large one was this extra 2% charge on certain types of investment income. What's that on?
Well, on dividends payable from the 5th of April next year. So 5th of April 2026, the tax rate on dividends will be going up by 2% on the basic rate and the main rate of income tax. The bank interest received, other investment income from 2027 will have a 22, a 42 and a 47% rate payable on bank interest and other interest earned. And something very close to my heart, rents. Landlords are going to be paying extra income tax on their rental profits. They will be paying 22% or if their marginal rate is 42% on rental income. And if they are in that top tax bracket, 47% on their rental income from 2027.
So overall, we've got a lot of tax rises and there isn't really any good news for anybody. I'm not sure where the rabbits were this year. I think they've all hopped away or been baked into pies.
Yeah, either that or they're hiding in their burrows because it's so cold today.
So from a business tax point of view, I think the big challenge that Rachel Reeves alluded to was how to get growth going. And for me, there was just nothing in this budget that's really going to encourage entrepreneurs. They have got a new consultation coming out about how can the tax system encourage entrepreneurs. It's a bit wet in a way to have a consultation on that. They ought to know what works by now and be actually doing something. There wasn't any enormously good news. At least there wasn't any bad news compared to last time. We didn't get any more hikes on things like national insurance. There was quite a technical change on capital allowances. They're being reduced for larger businesses. You'll still get your full expensing for assets that qualify, but for any assets where you're claiming writing down allowances, that's going to go down to 14% from 18%. And overall, that's raising $1.5 billion by 2029-30, which is quite a sizable sum. I remember when whole budgets only used to raise about 2 or 3 billion.
Yeah, and it's a much bigger sum than some of the other changes that we're going to come on to. So it's a lot of money they're expecting to collect through that what feels a techie minor change. But also, we mustn't forget that it's a change that relates to money that's been invested by businesses. They're investing in the plant and machinery, the equipment they need to undertake their businesses.
I think when we were discussing earlier, Heather, we both felt that one of the biggest issues for business is going to be around the relationship with employees. So last year we had the rise in national insurance. Employees are being hit by fiscal drag. The living wage is going up, which makes employing people more expensive. And I think particularly it's getting very tough for young people to get their first job. The rate of youth unemployment is now over 15%. And then the big money raiser is this salary sacrifice change. Do you want to talk through that one, Heather, and how that works?
Well, at the moment, and I emphasise at the moment, you can sacrifice some of your salary and say, I would like to put 10% of my salary, my pay rise, into my pension fund. And what happens then is that your employer makes a direct contribution to your pension fund. That money doesn't go through the payroll, and in particular, it doesn't go through your pay slip. So national insurance is not paid by you or your employer on that the money that you're sacrificing to go into your pension fund. And income tax is not deducted or payable by you, the employee. The gross goes straight into your pension fund. Some very generous employers will share the saving they make on the employer's national insurance they're not paying. But what it is, it's a great way of getting some money into your pension fund and bringing down your headline salary.
And I think it's been particularly attractive for people in that sort of relatively well-paid band where they've got a very high tax rate. If you get a pay rise from 99,000 of another 5,000, suddenly you start losing your personal allowance. You might lose free childcare. Putting that extra money into the pension has been very attractive. And I think the problem is these salary sacrifice schemes have become very widespread. As with all these things, if it gets used too much, it gets too expensive for the government and we get a clampdown. So what's the new rule going to be?
So from 2029, so we've got a little bit of time, but from April 2029, the most you will be able to sacrifice is £2,000 a year. So a massive change there. But as I say, we've got until 2029. So there are opportunities there for employers and employees to think about how they would like to get some money into their pension fund prior to 2029, and indeed how they would like to work and what works for families, for individuals in terms of days, hours, gross salary after 2029 to manage the whole household budget. Because Heather, you mentioned childcare, some of those allowances, the falling away of the personal allowance makes a massive difference to the effective hourly rate that you're going to earn.
One thing that I think is very important to say is that there hasn't been any change to tax relief on pensions. People can still put money into their pensions and get full tax relief on it, subject to the usual limits, which is normally £40,000 a year. There was some fear that that might change, and that hasn't changed at all.
So indeed, so at an individual level, if you're not getting a benefit of sharing the national insurance saving that your employer gets, your personal position isn't going to change. We touched on investment income rules changing as well, taxation changing. That's going to have a big impact, I think, on individuals, because we've got dividends paying extra tax from 2026 and we've got interest and rents where we're paying extra tax from 2027.
I think with dividends and interest, the obvious answer is to have as much as possible of your savings in an ISA. And we did see some changes to ISAs, which we were half expecting. The change is going to be that there will still be a £20,000 limit a year, but you can't put more than 12,000 into a cash ISA unless you're over 65, in which case you can still put the full 20,000 in. There's a bit of me says that, well, that's just making it more complicated. But actually, my elderly mum has got some money from the sale of her house. It is sitting in cash ISAs because at almost 88, there's no point her investing in stocks and shares, and she might need that money to top up her care home fees. So I'm quite pleased there is a carve out for older people for that. Whether it will actually encourage people to put more into shares or whether we'll just see savings go down generally, I'm not so sure.
Well, to tell the truth, Heather, if savings go down slightly and people actually start spending in the high street, the Chancellor might be a very happy woman, because that'll be VAT collections going up and potentially employment increasing on the high street, because we'll need a few more people working there. So we shall have to see. I did want to talk about mansion tax.
I was just going to ask you about property tax more generally and landlords and how they're going to be feeling after the budget.
Yeah, well, let's start with the landlords, because we were talking about extra taxes on investment income. So landlords are going to be paying 2% more on their rental profits from 2027. And buy-to-let landlords have been feeling really battered in the last 5-6 years. A lot of the tax rules have changed for them. They no longer get full relief for the interest they pay on their mortgages. They'll only get relief for 20% of interest paid. They've got a raft of legislation that deals with the actual rules around letting a property and all that they have to comply with or have to pay a managing agent to make sure they comply with. And we've just had the Leasehold Reform Act come through. So in terms of rent rises, in terms of getting access to your property, life is getting a lot tougher. And last but not least, we have all of the property agents saying forecasts for the growth in the value of residential properties are very low. We are not going to see double-digit growth in the terms of the value of homes. So another 2% tax payable from your rental profits is going to make a lot of landlords, I think, sit back, do their sums and look at actually how much cash they're generating from these investments. Do they want to stay there? Some may well decide to sell up. And one thing that didn't change in this budget is the capital gains tax rate. So the top rate they'll pay on any gain they've made, let's be positive, on the gain they've made on their investment property, the top rate they'll pay on that will be 24%. If someone wants to stay in the market, wants to build a buy-to-let portfolio, just feel that this is the right place to be, there will be a huge attraction in using a company as the vehicle to own the properties. I just want to put one health warning up there. There's been a lot of schemes over the years where people say, take your personal property portfolio, we can transfer it into a company for you. You won't have to pay any taxes. No real change in ownership. Those schemes come with a massive, massive health warning. HMRC don't like them. They've had various amnesties. There are big tax liabilities that can arise. But if you're buying a new property, absolutely set up a company and buy that property in the name of the company and gradually transition your portfolio into the company as you sell those that you own personally. Buy-to-let landlords, I think the days are coming to an end where people own properties personally and let them out. And actually, I think the government quite likes that. It makes the letting industry very visible. They can see what's going on. You have to do filings at Companies House. They have full, proper statutory accounts. They know they're getting the right tax take.
So just a couple of final points I wanted to mention. One little bit of good news. There was a lot of upset last year with the changes to business property relief and agricultural property relief. And in particular, the reduced amounts were only available to individuals. So if you had a farm owned jointly by husband and wife, they got one lot of relief between them and would actually have had to split the ownership in order that they could both benefit from the relief. It's now going to become a transferable allowance, just like the main inheritance tax allowance. And I think that's not too expensive a change for Rachel Reeve. It does show she has listened to some of the real hardships that was causing.
Yeah, completely agree.
And finally, some bad news. If you're fond of using your private jet, air passenger duty is going to go up. So I'm not sure where you're jetting off to next, Heather, but I hope you weren't going to be using a private jet.
Highly unlikely, I think, Heather, but I'll bear it in mind. Add it to the holiday budget.
Well, we could talk for hours about the budget. And of course, this is just our first impressions, having done our best to read as much of the detailed documents as we can in the 3 or 4 hours since Rachel Reeves actually sat down. Anyway, our editorial team say we've got to keep to time today. So that's about it from us.
The Tax Factor Autumn Budget Special.
If you want more budget detail, please do visit our website to watch our budget breakdown programme hosted by journalist and broadcaster Simon Gompers with Blick Rothenberg CEO Nimesh Shah, Head of Private Client John Bull, and both Heathers. We've had a very busy day. Visit blickrothenberg.com and follow the links to the Autumn Budget Hub or simply search Blick Rothenberg Autumn Budget.
There's a whole range of budget content on the website, including our famous tax calculator, so you can see how you stand financially after the budget, although somehow I doubt you're going to be better off. Thank you for joining us for our budget special. And finally, just before we go...
Hello, everyone. Hello. Can you hear me? This is not a test. Sorry to interrupt your usual weekly broadcast. I just needed to hop on to the Tax Factor airwaves to give a big shout out to our producer, Michael Bolton, on his final episode of the Tax Factor. Michael, huge thanks to your vision, passion and direction to create the UK's top tax podcast. You'll be long remembered and missed in the Tax Factor studio, so please remember us when you pick up your Grammy. Oh, and it seems a few others have dropped by.
Check 1 2, check 1 2. Hello, Michael. It's Ellie Theachari. I'm so sad that you're leaving. I know wherever you go, you will be amazing. It's been so fun to work with you. And thank you so much for giving me all of the opportunity to work with you on the Tax Factor. I really wish you all the best and thank you for everything. Good luck.
Hello. Can you read me? Hi, Michael. It's Paul Hayward-Schiefer here. Just sending you a quick message before you leave for pastures new. All the best with the future and what you do next, but also to reflect and say thank you very much for all the huge amounts of help that you've given to me over the last few years, especially with the budget. You've often made my life a lot easier, so it really has been really great working with you. Anyway, you're a good egg and I really do wish you all the best for the future, Michael. So thanks again.
Check 1 2, check 1 2. Hello, do you read me? Coming through, check 1 2. Hello. Hi, Michael, it's Neil Insall. Just a quick word to say good luck. Congratulations on all that you've achieved at Blick Rothenberg. We love your Tax Factor. I love being on your Tax Factor. I may have a face for radio, but you're the star here. So thank you and good luck in it.
Right, that's enough sad thoughts. Back to the studio.
We'd like to wish him all the best as he moves on. The Tax Factor is back next week on its usual day with Michael Holland and Annie Hughes. But from Heather and Heather, it's goodbye.
Goodbye.
I commend this statement to the House.
That's the Budget Tax Factor. If you'd like to dig a little deeper into what today's announcements really mean, don't miss our budget breakdown, hosted by journalist and broadcaster Simon Gompers, with Blick Rothenberg CEO Nimesh Shah and a panel of top experts. They'll be sharing their reactions, insights, and what the changes could mean for you and your business. You can watch it now on our website. Just head to blickrothenberg.com and follow the links to the Budget Hub, or simply search Blick Rothenberg Budget Hub. And of course, you can catch up on all previous episodes of The Tax Factor on our website or wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe now so you'll never miss an episode. Copyright 2025. The Tax Factor.